how you can share things and make people editors. You can make people viewers, but this goes a little bit deeper than that. And so if I click into this, this is going to take me to a web page that talks all about URL tips and tricks. So if I change the URL up here of my document, it will change the way that someone is viewing my document. So for instance, this is a notes page that I want you guys to be able to have, because under Edit, Suggest, and View, I want you to be able to type a note for yourself. So if I want to get a copy of this to each of you, I'm simply going to go up to my URL, the address bar up top, and I'm going to change, this used to say something like this, edit, because I was an editor on here. This is the very end of the URL. And if I change the word edit to a new couple of words, template preview, like this, and share this link with you, which I will put in the chat right here. This is going to be your notes page, and I'll even make sure I label this as notes in case anybody else comes in after the fact. Google Notes. And you're going to have your own copy now of this document. Notice how it comes up. So I've just placed that in the chat. I click on it, and it's going to take you to a template preview. So this is now a preview of this page for you to use. And when you choose Use Template in the top right-hand corner, it's going to actually make a copy of this document for you. So I click Use Template, and it's going to make a new copy of this for me right here in the same tab. Notice the sharing is locked down specifically to me. And so this can be your notes page. And as Jeff and I present today, we want you to use this notes page not only to keep track of your own learning, but then also to be able to play around with some of the tips and tricks that we show you regarding Edit, Suggest, View, commenting and tagging, so on and so forth. So that is one URL trick. Another URL trick is the one that Jeff and I used to get you to this page right here. All right. We took a slides presentation. Again, Jessica had made us editors right here. And so our slides presentation, when we clicked into it, had a URL at the top that ended in edit. All right. If I change edit to present and click enter, it takes you to a link like Jeff and I shared initially in our chat. All right. And so then you're able to click through a slides presentation, but you don't have all the mess of the editing tools surrounding your slides presentation. Instead, you're just in a single Chrome tab. You're not actually on the slides presentation itself. So this is beneficial a lot of times for anybody who's presenting information in a dual monitor setup, like a lot of our teachers are these days. They'll want to present information off a slides presentation using this URL trick so they can just share info from one tab. All right. Another URL trick, again, here on our document, I can change the word edit to the word copy. And copy, this is just a less fancy way of doing what we did earlier with template preview, where it forces a copy for every single viewer. And it looks like this when somebody were to click on that link. So as you think about sharing that information with your building, with your staff, you might consider, is this a link to something that I really need my staff to be able to see all the mess of the editor around it? Are they going to want to print this document? Is this going to be a document that I need them to participate in? Or is it something that I want them to have their own copy of for notes purposes? Is this something that I want them to have their own copy of for any number of reasons? And so these URL tricks that are shown right here on this website, so right here, you just scroll down and there's a whole list of them. You can click on any of these are little URL tricks where you can export a slides presentation to a PDF, right? And you click through and you get all these different URL tips and tricks right here. There's quite a few of them. We've covered a couple of them today, but I wanted to make sure that you're aware of those. All right. If you have questions around this, we're going to have a little Q&A period towards the end of our time together today. But I want to turn it over to Jeff, who's going to discuss now different modes of viewing within Google Docs.
Hey, everybody. Jeff Nowinski here. I'm so excited to be with you today. And if I'm sharing correctly, you hopefully are looking at this Google for Secretaries November 2020. And we were taking a lot of your feedback. And we love the feedback that you guys gave. You gave tons and tons of suggestions of just different things that you're curious about. And gosh, when I think about some of these things, and hopefully each one of you has this document that you're able to take some notes on, and hopefully you guys see some new things, some things that maybe you've seen a glimpse of before and said, maybe there's a different way for me to use this within my everyday work. So what I'm going to talk about is this really the second part where it says edit, suggest, or view. We all know a little bit about sharing. There's a difference between sort of using Google Docs and using something like Microsoft Word that basically just lives on our computer. And if we want to share something, we just got to send that email off to someone else so they can be accessing and using those things. Well, in this area right here, this document is shared with, well, it looks like 3 people, right? And there's different privileges. Apparently I'm the owner, so I created this document, and I have the privilege to be able to kind of change what can John do. Right now he's an editor, which is really good because he's on this document with me and responsible for some of this content. But I could change him just to being a viewer, or just a commenter, or just an editor. And what I did, just so I can show you, is I just clicked on the word share. When I click on share, and I hope this is coming up for you guys, there's a pop-up window here. It shows the 3 of us that are on this document here, or that are that have privileges on this document. And I just click right next to John's name. I change him. I could change him to a viewer, which means basically this is a PDF. It becomes something that he can just sort of see. He's just being able to use his eyeballs and to be able to view this thing, right? Commenter is maybe something a little bit different. Commenter means that he's able to just make suggestions. So imagine that essay that we took. When was the last time we wrote an essay? Probably back in high school or in some sort of idea in college, right? And I remember having to do some peer edits. And what that means is that basically I'd be reading somebody else's paper. I'd be like, gosh, this makes no sense at all. I need to suggest something. And instead of grabbing my pen and sort of writing things down, in the 21st century here, we're able to go through and use this feature, this commenting feature, where basically I can highlight some of this stuff. And all of a sudden I get this little comment bubble, this comment box off on the right side. And I can then type in what I think they should write, but still ultimately let them choose what that looks like. So we'll take a look at that. And then editor means, hey, they get to actually make those changes. They can physically make every single one of those changes, and it's permanent. Well, sort of, kind of in a Google world, is anything really permanent? And we'll see that when we talk more about history. So whenever I make those changes, if right now, Krista, one of our ITSs is a commenter, I could change her to editor or anything else. If I make any changes in here, if I change her just to viewer, it says pending changes. It says that something has changed up here, and it's actually highlighted this. I can then hit save, okay? And that all of a sudden has changed her rights on this. We talked about editing, but I want to kind of show maybe what suggesting looks like. There's a way up here, if I can think about it. It's right here, right underneath the share button, there's a little pencil, and that pencil tool lets me navigate between those 3 modes. So I'm the owner. I'm always in edit mode unless I kind of manually switch myself to one of these other modes. So I'm going to switch to suggesting mode. And what's interesting about this is I can maybe say some notes here. Sharing is really cool. Instead of actually making that change happen and making it real and making it actually on the screen in the final document, notice it kind of adds over here. It says, hey, Jeff Novinsky at 8:14 a.m. this morning said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we put this thing right here? And then whoever is the owner, who's ever looking these items over, can then go and check mark this and say, yeah, that is something I want to put in there. And I think about some of the documents that we put, when we have parent-teacher conferences kind of looming over us right now. They're just coming up at just a few days away, right? And maybe there's some sort of procedures. And someone might ask you, say, hey, do these procedures look right? Is there anything we need to add to this? Instead of you physically making those changes, maybe suggesting is the way to go. Maybe putting that suggestion in there to say, this is the idea that I'm thinking. I'm not exactly sure the way it should be phrased, but this is kind of what I'm suggesting that something needs to change. And then that person can either accept that by clicking the check mark, or they can hit X and say, no, that's not what we need. Or they can have a little sidebar conversation. We'll talk more about that a little bit with our commenting and tagging, which is coming up next. I'm going to switch myself back to editing mode. And that means that I could actually go through and edit this document as I want. I'm going to hand this back over to John to talk more about commenting and sharing or tagging. And I just want to encourage you, if you guys have some questions about this in particular, throw those things over in the comment area, and we'll get to those hopefully in about 10 minutes. That sounds good.
All right, thanks for that, Jeff. As we're continuing to look at this doc here, Jeff just covered a lot of really great topics. And notice that suggestion mode, an editor can do anything, right? And when you really look at who can begin suggesting, even someone who has the permission of commenter can suggest. And so it actually automatically starts that person in suggestion mode. That way it doesn't actually change the real document at all. Instead, it makes recommendations for what the editor might accept or reject as changes to their own doc. So that feature is more specific here to Google Docs itself, but this next feature we're diving into is called commenting and tagging, and that feature actually is pervasive across the G Suite or the Google Workspace tools like Docs, Sheets, Slides, Drawings. And commenting is really a neat feature if you've not used it a ton. Notice I'm here on this doc, and this is a suggestion that Jeff has made. I can either accept the suggestion or deny the suggestion, but over here is where my comments show up for this doc. I'm actually going to accept his suggestion and see it becomes a reality right here on my doc, as though I'd edit it to be such, and he's excited about that. But if I come in here and I say, all right, we're working on this doc collaboratively. Again, you may be doing this a lot for some of the administrative teams that you work alongside. They may ask you to make suggestions to their document. That way they can have final control over what it says, but maybe you have some tips and tricks from your purview of the school world that are going to be really beneficial for parents, teachers, anybody that we work with to consider. So one way to communicate on a document or in a slide or on a drawing is to do something like this. If I highlight some text, really cool, that sounds like very informal language. When I highlight this text, I can come over here to the comment bubble and click plus, add a comment. When I do that, it's going to give me a sidebar over here to write a comment. Maybe consider more formal language, right? Because this is going to be seen by important people. And so I type a comment out, but if I really want to ensure that whoever I'm co-editing this document or suggesting on this document with sees this thing, I need to tag them in my comment. So to tag, Google's just changed it a little bit. It used to be you could type in a plus and then type in someone's email address. So if I type in plus Jeffrey Nowinski right here, it's going to then tag Jeff in this. And notice it changed my plus to an @ symbol. This is the most recent change that Google's made with commenting and tagging, is now you can just, instead of hitting plus, I think they're maybe trying to make it a little bit more towards chatting, right? If you type an @ then it's going to direct someone's attention to this. But I could type an @ and another colleague's name right here. And when I do this, it's going to alert these colleagues as soon as I click comment. It's by sending them an email notification that, hey, so-and-so has mentioned you in a comment on this document. And what's neat is Google's recently updated it to where even within your email, you can see the comments that have been made, and you can continue to reply to those comments directly from your Gmail. So that's kind of a fun way, if you are really familiar with some documents that you've been heavily editing recently, and say, oh, I know that should or shouldn't be this, you don't even have to open the document. Instead, you can open it right there from your email and reply to those comments. So I'm going to take Corey out of here because she's not actually a part of our presentation today. I'm going to select comment, and that just sent Jeff an email. There was an option for me to assign this to him. So that way, specifically, he knows this is assigned to you, so only you can really make this change, Jeff. All right. Otherwise, other people may see it and then think that this is a change for them to make as well. So that's commenting and tagging in a nutshell. Again, if this is something that you want to learn more about, ask a question here in our Q&A section coming up in just a minute. I'm going to quit sharing and then mute myself so that way Jeff can take back over here.
I love these transitions. Sorry, it gives you a little bit of time to breathe and maybe to write some questions over in that chat area for you if that's what you're aiming for. I'm over here in our document again. I hope I'm presenting correctly. Sometimes when you're doing this, you just have a little bit of doubt, and that's okay because I know I'm trying to do the right thing, and we'll see how it goes. So John sent this to me. I got basically an email letting me know what was going on, and I was going to take you over to my email, and I was going to do it for a second, and my email is kind of a complete mess right now. And sometimes I feel that way about my calendar. Is somebody's calendar just kind of clogged up and everything else? And sometimes there's just so much stuff on there, and I just want to talk just a moment about that. As we're, I was just getting a notification that I'm sharing, so that's fantastic. I'm in this little area that says calendar, keep, tasks. I was going to talk 10 minutes about it, but I'm going to try talking about 3 or 4 minutes about it. So the idea is that when I'm in this document, when I'm typing, when I'm trying to build something, maybe that procedures for parent-teacher conferences, I'm just going to throw that at you again. Sometimes it helps to be able to kind of reference some other things that I've been working on, some places that I've kept some other information. And I could navigate to some other tabs, or I can actually live just right here inside of my Google Docs. So I'm going to talk to you about this. And I'm actually going to look at this bar that's over here on the right side. Some of you may have clicked a little arrow that kind of closes that panel. There is a little arrow down here that opens it. It says show side panel if it's not there, but it shows a little icon of our calendar. It shows a little light bulb, which is actually the keep tool. And there's also something that's blue that has like maybe a little pencil and a dot or something on it. And that's actually our tasks. And I'd love to see a show of hands on how many people are using these, but some of us have our cameras off, so I'm not going to ask that. But this basically gives me like a little peek right inside my calendar. So here's what my day looks like. I don't know what your guys' days look like, but what my day looks like just today. And I could switch between certain days, but I can kind of get a good glimpse at my calendar without even leaving this document, which I think is kind of fun. The same thing goes on in Keep. If you've never used Keep, Keep is like kind of like some Post-it notes, but like digital Post-it notes. And I can use my phone to keep track of keeps, any messages as I'm walking around the school, as I'm working with teachers, as I'm away from my desk. I can actually write those on my phone, and they show up digitally in Keep wherever that application is installed. So that application hits on the web, so I can have it here as a separate tab inside of Chrome. But I can also access that Keep, those notes within this Google Doc. So right here, Secretaries, PD, here it says be positive. I hope I've been positive today. Meet them where they are and talk about Google. Well, that's kind of what we're doing, right? But those are some pieces that I can use here that I can sort of think about. And if I click these 3 dots, this is kind of a neat thing. I can actually add all those notes that I have from this area. I can add them right into my document. I'm not sure where I'm clicked at over my document, where we can actually click those. And all of a sudden they stuck them right here because that's where my cursor must have been above this sharing is cool. But it basically puts all that information that I was keeping track of, that I was keeping over in this note, I could toss it over here into this other document for me to use. So that's kind of a powerful thing. Same thing with tasks. If you're someone who's worked on tasks a lot, you can add tasks and sort of keep track of those things that you need to know and need to be doing throughout the day. Like present awesomeness to secretaries is one of my tasks for today. I can also see those right inside of this Google Doc without leaving. So I'm gonna close this down just to kind of show you what was going on. I just want to show you that those are there, and even they can be used within sort of Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Draw, and Google Sheets. So that's kind of a fun thing. I'll give John about 1 full minute to talk about the history, and then we'll try to open it up for some questions and just additional places for you to learn. So thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you guys for hanging with us here. I know that it's a lot of transition as we jump back and forth between topics. We're just trying to keep things lively this morning as it's early and you're still getting the majority of your coffee into you to wake up for today. So thanks for hanging with us. I did want to talk about something called view history and then version history. All right, 2 real quick tips regarding these things. I'm going to jump over to a document that our department helped produce, and it actually has some good view history to it. So when I think view history, I want to know who has seen this document that is important for our staff to be seeing, right? And this is one on parent-teacher conferences. And so when I'm an editor on a document, I can go in and see what's called view history, all right? So document editors can see view history for this file. I notice when I hover, I notice there's somebody on the document at the moment. So when I click in here, it's going to tell me who the viewers are. Now, this one has seen so many viewers that it tells you that you can't see all of this. Instead, go to viewer trend data. So I jump over here to the left menu and I look into viewer trend. This is where I can see some stats about my document. Notice daily unique viewers from the time this document was created, October 19th until today. All right, and if I hover, it tells me how many people have seen my document on which day. And these are unique viewers per day. All right. So today only 10 people have looked at it, but I would imagine with conferences right around the corner that number is going to shoot up here in the next couple of days. Notice I've got a little bar up top where I can view the total history of this document using the slider bar. That's kind of neat. And then I can also view things like comment trends, sharing history, and then privacy settings for this document over its lifespan. So that's view history. If I continue looking at this document and I want to see maybe different revisions or versions of this, let's say you have a document that you put out to your staff every single year and it only needs minor tweaks. Well, one way of doing that is going into File and going down to where it says Version History, all right? One thing, people a lot of times come to version history and they skip straight to see version history because they want to see the edits that have been done over time. I would instead encourage you maybe to consider using name current version. What this does is it names your version. So this might be PT Conferences 2020, right? So that next year when I go back to this and I want to view my version history, I come down to File, Version History, and I click into See Version History. I do have an option to only show named versions. So instead of seeing all the edits, I see it at the point in time where I liked it last year. And then I can see, all right, I have this version right here. And I can always restore that version. I can name next year's version. And by doing this, you have kind of a running history of this same document and how it's changed and morphed over a period of time. What else is nice is if I take off the named versions, because I only have one named version, and I want to go back to when this thing began, right here, because this was really the best version until my teammates came in and messed it up. I say that tongue in cheek. My teammates only do awesome work. You can tell it's blank here, but if I wanted a blank document back, I would click Restore this version, and it would restore this version of the document. You can also get way more granular by clicking on any of the carets, and it's going to allow you to see who edited and at what time and what changes they made. Really useful for teachers in the classroom, but also useful for you as you learn to manage Google Docs and maybe reduce clutter within your Google Drive. So there's that. I know I took more than a minute, Jeff. That's view and version history. All right, I'm going to toss it to you to wrap us up, start a little Q&A. I'll watch the chat. And thank you guys for your time and attention today if I don't get to talk to you again.
I started talking. I was still muted. So I am just, man, flabbergasted by all the cool stuff going on that we covered so much ground on different things in such a short period of time. And man, there's so many more places we could go. And I just want to point you down to the very bottom here, this additional learning Google Support Center. This is a link that would take you out to some place where basically you can just sort of ask questions and Google comes back with some answers on these specific Google tools. Also, the ITS department has put out all sorts of videos lately and throughout the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, where we have tried to address some of the most common questions, some of the most common things that people are asking about. So we're maybe a good place for those questions as well, as far as answering those questions. So I want to just point you there. If there's something that you were thinking about in this area, you still have more questions, those are two good sources, besides having an actual person to ask questions to. And I'm going to ask, hey, if you want, right now is a great time for you to be asking questions. I'm going to stop sharing. And we're just going to open it up for questions. Anything from the chat window that's here, or anything that you are just curious about, we have at least 30 seconds that we can maybe answer that question. John, do you want to cover this one?
All right, perfect. I see Sam has asked here in the chat, is there a way to lock a document so that someone cannot make a copy? Yes, you can actually do that in the share settings. So if I were to jump up here, oh, I'm not sharing my screen. In the share settings, you have the ability to, I'm not going to share my screen for time purposes, but you have the ability to keep people from making copies of a document when you share it. It's a little checkbox that should show up underneath the people's names as you enter them in the share box. So feel free to try that out here in your document if you want to, but that's a way of locking it. And there's also this method too, which I guess Jeff is showing. Jeff, I'd love for you to show too, if you get the opportunity, how to, let's go in, let's see, Jeff. Yeah, viewers should, and click send. Perfect. So thanks for jumping in to show that, Jeff. And then within this document here, let's go into the settings. You're all right. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't exactly where I remembered it being, but I believe it is under the settings cogwheel there. I would also encourage you to use the URL trick of /preview. So if you share your document with the /preview on the end, what that's going to do is it's going to take away the menu buttons for everybody. All right. And that way, no, people can't print it, but they also can't file, make a copy. They can't do anything with this document because they're in preview mode. All right. So that's hopefully another way to lock that apart from sharing settings. Good question. Jessica, thank you. I see that. So